Emotional neglect does not always arrive loudly. It often enters quietly, through missed conversations, distracted listening, and feelings that are brushed aside because life feels too busy, too demanding, or too exhausting. Over time, when emotional needs go unmet, a person can begin to feel invisible even while standing next to someone every day. For many men, this neglect is not something they can easily name. They may not say, "I feel emotionally abandoned," but they feel it in the distance, the silence, and the growing sense that their inner world no longer matters to anyone. Men are often conditioned to believe that their value lies in what they provide, not in what they feel. When appreciation fades and emotional affirmation disappears, they may begin to question their worth. A lack of emotional connection can slowly erode confidence, replacing it with doubt and restlessness. When conversations become transactional and affection becomes routine, the heart starts craving recognition, warmth, and understanding. This craving does not vanish just because it is ignored. It grows stronger in the shadows. Unmet emotional needs can create a dangerous internal gap. In that gap lie loneliness, frustration, and the desire to be seen without having to explain or justify oneself. When a man feels that his emotions are dismissed or minimized, he may stop sharing them altogether. Silence then becomes a habit, and emotional withdrawal feels safer than rejection. Yet the need for connection never disappears. It waits, searching for a place where it can finally breathe. In moments like these, attention from someone new can feel intoxicating. Not because it is deeper or more meaningful, but because it feels immediate and effortless. Being listened to, admired, or emotionally noticed can awaken parts of the self that felt forgotten. What is often mistaken for love or desire is, at its core, relief. Relief from feeling unimportant. Relief from emotional isolation. Relief from the ache of being emotionally overlooked. This is how emotional neglect can quietly open the door to destructive choices. When needs are unmet, at home, and never addressed, the heart may seek comfort elsewhere, even when the mind knows the consequences. The search is not always for another person, but for the feeling of being valued again. The danger lies in mistaking temporary validation for genuine connection. Emotional neglect also creates resentment. When feelings are consistently ignored, small disappointments pile up into unspoken anger. Without healthy communication, that resentment has nowhere to go. It can turn inward, damaging self-worth, or outward, damaging trust. In that emotional tension, clarity fades, and boundaries weaken. Understanding this does not excuse betrayal, but it reveals its emotional roots. Emotional needs are not weaknesses. They are fundamental human necessities. When they are denied, ignored, or belittled, people begin to seek them in unhealthy ways. Emotional neglect is not about the absence of love, but about the absence of emotional presence, empathy, and genuine attention. When emotional needs are met, people feel anchored, secure, and valued. When they are neglected, even the strongest individuals can feel lost, disconnected, and vulnerable to choices they never imagined making. Emotional fulfillment is not a luxury in relationships. It is the foundation upon which trust, loyalty, and commitment survive. Fear of vulnerability often begins early, long before relationships become complicated or commitments are made. Many men grow up learning that showing emotion is a risk, that expressing fear, sadness, or confusion is a sign of weakness. They are taught to stay composed, to solve problems silently, and to carry emotional weight alone. Over time, this conditioning builds emotional walls that feel protective but slowly become isolating. When vulnerability feels unsafe, communication becomes limited, guarded, and incomplete. Poor. Communication is rarely about the absence of words, it is about the absence of truth. Conversations may happen every day, yet the most important thoughts remain unspoken. When a man does not feel comfortable expressing what hurts him, what he needs, or what he fears, misunderstandings grow. Small issues remain unresolved, slowly turning into emotional distance. Instead of speaking openly, many choose avoidance, believing silence will keep the peace, even as it quietly erodes connection. Fear of vulnerability can cause emotional disconnection even in long-term relationships. When feelings are hidden, partners may sense something is wrong but cannot name it. This creates frustration on both sides. One feels unheard but cannot explain why, while the other feels shut out without understanding how to get closer. Emotional intimacy requires openness, and when openness is replaced with emotional armor, closeness becomes difficult to sustain. Men who struggle with vulnerability often express emotions indirectly. Stress may appear as anger, withdrawal, or detachment rather than honest conversation. Emotional needs may surface as impatience or criticism instead of request for understanding. This indirect expression creates confusion and conflict, making it harder to address the real issue. The more misunderstood a person feels, the more they retreat into emotional isolation. Poor communication also affects how conflict is handled. Instead of addressing concerns openly, issues may be ignored, minimized, or buried. Over time, unresolved conflicts accumulate, creating emotional pressure beneath the surface. The relationship may be stable on the outside while internally it becomes fragile. Without clear communication, assumptions replace understanding and emotional safety disappears. When vulnerability is avoided, connection weakens. A man may feel that no one truly knows him, even if he is surrounded by people. This internal loneliness can be overwhelming. When someone new offers a space where he feels listened to without judgment, it can feel like relief. Speaking freely, being understood, and feeling emotionally accepted can be powerful experiences for someone who has long suppressed his inner world. This fear-driven silence often leads to emotional disconnection rather than protection. What was meant to prevent pain ends up creating it. Communication is not just about sharing information, it is about sharing oneself. Without that exchange, relationships lose depth and emotional resilience. Learning to communicate honestly requires courage. It means risking rejection, misunderstanding, or discomfort. But without that risk, genuine intimacy cannot exist. When vulnerability is embraced, communication becomes a bridge rather than a barrier. When it is avoided, emotional needs remain unmet, and the distance between partners quietly grows. The desire for validation and admiration is deeply rooted in the human need to feel valued, respected, and significant. For many men, this desire is not about ego or vanity, but about reassurance. It's about knowing that their efforts matter, that their presence is appreciated, and that they are seen beyond their responsibilities. When validation is absent, even a confident person can begin to feel emotionally invisible, questioning their worth and relevance within the relationship. Validation is often communicated through small, consistent signals, words of appreciation, genuine interest, and acknowledgement of effort. When these signals fade, a quiet emptiness can take their place. A man may still fulfill his role, meet expectations, and show up physically, yet feel emotionally overlooked. Over time, the absence of admiration can create a sense of being taken for granted, where contributions are expected but rarely recognized. This emotional gap can lead to a search for external affirmation. When someone else notices, compliments, or admires what has gone unseen, it can awaken a powerful emotional response. The attention feels refreshing, not because it is deeper, but because it is new and affirming. Feeling admired can restore a sense of importance that has been missing, even if only temporarily. Admiration also reinforces identity. It reminds a person of who they are and what they bring into the world. When admiration disappears in a relationship, identity can feel blurred. A man may feel reduced to a role rather than recognized as an individual. This loss of personal recognition can create restlessness, frustration, and emotional dissatisfaction. In some cases, validation becomes associated with attraction and desire. Being wanted, praised, or emotionally pursued can feel like proof of worth. When admiration is missing at home, the emotional pull of being desired elsewhere becomes stronger. What may appear as infidelity often begins as a hunger to feel chosen again. The danger lies in confusing validation with connection. External admiration often lacks depth and stability, yet it satisfies an immediate emotional need. When someone feels consistently undervalued, even superficial praise can feel powerful. The brain responds to recognition as a reward, reinforcing behaviors that provide it. This need for admiration is rarely spoken aloud. Many men struggle to ask for appreciation because it feels uncomfortable or self-centered. Instead of expressing the need directly, they may internalize the lack of validation as personal failure. Over time, this internal narrative weakens emotional resilience and increases vulnerability to external attention. Validation does not mean constant praise. It means feeling seen and respected. Without it, emotional dissatisfaction grows quietly. When admiration returns from an unexpected source, it can feel like emotional oxygen. The experience of being noticed, affirmed, and appreciated can temporarily fill a void that has been ignored for too long. Understanding the role of validation reveals how emotional needs shape behavior. When admiration is consistently present, it strengthens bonds and reinforces commitment. When it is absent, the desire to feel significant can override judgment, drawing attention away from the relationship and toward anything that restores a sense of worth. Routine has a quiet way of settling into life. What once felt exciting and full of discovery slowly becomes predictable, structured and familiar. While stability can be comforting, emotional stagnation often hides inside routine when curiosity, novelty, and intentional connection fade. For many men, this emotional flatness is difficult to articulate. Life may look successful from the outside, yet internally there is a sense of dullness, as if something essential is missing but cannot be clearly named. Emotional emptiness does not mean a lack of love. It means a lack of emotional stimulation, growth, and presence. Days begin to feel repetitive. Conversations feel rehearsed and interactions lose their spark. When emotional engagement is replaced by obligation, the relationship can start to feel like a routine task rather than a living connection. This monotony can create a quiet dissatisfaction that grows over time. In this state, escape becomes tempting. Escape does not always mean leaving physically. It often begins mentally. Daydreaming, emotional withdrawal, and seeking distraction become coping mechanisms. When the emotional landscape feels flat, anything that offers excitement, curiosity, or emotional intensity can feel alluring. The mind starts craving contrast to the sameness of daily life. Routine can also reduce emotional risk-taking. When life becomes predictable, people stop expressing deeper thoughts, fears, and desires. Emotional safety turns into emotional distance. Without shared vulnerability, relationships lose their emotional depth, even if daily interactions continue smoothly. The absence of emotional challenge creates a space where emptiness can thrive. For some men, emotional emptiness is tied to a loss of purpose within the relationship. When roles become rigid and personal growth is no longer encouraged, identity can feel restricted. The relationship may meet practical needs but fail to nourish emotional or psychological growth. This internal stagnation can create restlessness and a desire to feel alive again. Escape often appears in subtle forms. A conversation that feels effortless, laughter that feels spontaneous, or attention that feels engaging can trigger a powerful emotional response. These moments contrast sharply with routine, making them feel intense and meaningful. The novelty itself becomes emotionally stimulating, even if the connection lacks depth. The danger of escaping routine is that it offers temporary relief without addressing the underlying emptiness. Emotional excitement can mask dissatisfaction but cannot resolve it. When routine remains unchanged, the emptiness returns, often stronger than before. The cycle continues as the desire for escape grows. Emotional emptiness thrives when intentional effort fades. Relationships require renewal, curiosity, and emotional investment to stay alive. Without these, routine becomes a silent drain on emotional energy. The longing to escape is not always about another person. It is about escaping the feeling of emotional stagnation. Understanding this dynamic reveals how emotional emptiness shapes behavior. When routine dominates and emotional engagement disappears, the search for stimulation becomes a search for feeling alive. Without addressing the root of emptiness, escape becomes a temporary illusion of fulfillment rather than a path to lasting emotional satisfaction. Unresolved personal insecurities often operate beneath the surface, shaping thoughts, reactions, and decisions without being fully recognized. Many men carry doubts about their worth, attractiveness, competence, or relevance, even when they appear confident outwardly. These insecurities are rarely spoken because admitting them feels risky, uncomfortable, or shameful. Instead, they remain internal, quietly influencing behavior and emotional responses in relationships. Insecurities often originate from past experiences such as rejection, criticism, comparison, or unmet expectations. Childhood messages, previous relationships, or social pressures can leave lasting impressions that resurface later in life. When these insecurities are never addressed, they become internal narratives that question value and adequacy. Man may wonder whether he is enough, whether he is still desired, or whether he is losing his significance over time. Within a relationship, these insecurities can intensify. Normal challenges or conflicts may be interpreted as personal failures rather than shared difficulties. A lack of reassurance or emotional feedback can amplify self-doubt, even when no harm is intended. Instead of expressing these fears openly, many men internalize them, allowing insecurity to quietly grow. Unresolved insecurities often seek external validation. Compliments, attention, and admiration can temporarily silence self-doubt. When someone else shows interest or appreciation, it can feel like proof that the negative internal narrative is wrong. This validation does not heal insecurity, but it provides momentary relief from it. The feeling of being desired or admired can become emotionally addictive. These insecurities can also distort perception. A man may misinterpret emotional distance as rejection or routine as loss of attraction. Even stable relationships can feel fragile when insecurity dominates internal dialogue. Without addressing these fears, trust becomes difficult and emotional stability weakens. Insecurity can drive behavior that contradicts personal values. The desire to feel confident, attractive, or important can override rational judgment. What appears as impulsive or selfish behavior often stems from a deep need to reassure the self. The pursuit of external affirmation becomes a way to escape feelings of inadequacy. Many men struggle to confront insecurities because vulnerability feels threatening. Acknowledging insecurity requires honesty, self-reflection, and emotional exposure. Without these tools, insecurity remains unresolved, influencing actions from behind the scenes. Silence allows insecurity to grow unchecked. Personal insecurities also affect emotional availability. When someone doubts their worth, they may struggle to fully engage emotionally. Fear of rejection or inadequacy can lead to emotional withdrawal, defensiveness, or overcompensation. These patterns create distance, further reinforcing insecurity. Understanding unresolved insecurities reveals how internal struggles shape external behavior. The need to feel worthy, desired, and confident is universal. When insecurity is ignored, it seeks expression through attention, admiration, and validation rather than through self-acceptance and emotional growth. A lack of emotional connection and intimacy often develops gradually, not from a single moment, but from a series of small disconnections that accumulate over time. Physical presence may remain, routines may continue, and responsibilities may still be shared, yet the emotional bond slowly weakens. When intimacy fades, relationships can begin to feel distant, even when two people are close in proximity. This emotional gap can be confusing, especially when there is no clear conflict or dramatic change. Emotional intimacy is built through shared vulnerability, trust, and consistent emotional engagement. When these elements are missing, conversations become surface level and predictable. Feelings, fears, and dreams remain unshared. Without emotional depth, partners may stop feeling truly known or understood. This absence can create a quiet loneliness within the relationship, where emotional needs are present but unmet. Many men struggle to recognize or articulate this loss of intimacy. They may sense a growing distance but lack the language to express it. Instead of addressing the emotional gap, they adapt to it, believing that distance is a normal part of long-term relationships. Over time, this acceptance of emotional separation can normalize disconnection. Intimacy is not limited to physical closeness. It is emotional accessibility. When emotional accessibility disappears, physical connection may also lose meaning. Touch becomes habitual rather than expressive, and affection becomes routine rather than intentional. Without emotional presence, intimacy loses its power to create closeness and security. The absence of emotional connection can lead to a longing to feel emotionally seen again. When someone else listens attentively, shows curiosity, or offers emotional warmth, it can feel deeply fulfilling. These moments of connection contrast sharply with emotional distance, making them feel significant and meaningful, even if they are brief. Lack of intimacy also affects self-perception. Feeling emotionally disconnected can lead to self-doubt, questioning one's desirability and importance. When emotional closeness fades, reassurance becomes scarce, leaving room for insecurity and dissatisfaction. Emotional connection plays a key role in maintaining emotional stability and confidence within a relationship. When intimacy is missing, misunderstandings increase. Without open emotional exchange, assumptions replace clarity. Emotional needs go unspoken, leading to frustration and resentment. The relationship becomes vulnerable to emotional drift as connection weakens. Rebuilding intimacy requires awareness, effort, and emotional courage. Without recognizing the importance of emotional connection, relationships risk becoming emotionally empty. The human need for intimacy does not disappear when it is ignored. It seeks fulfillment elsewhere, often in unhealthy ways. Understanding the impact of emotional disconnection reveals how intimacy shapes loyalty, trust, and emotional security. When emotional connection is present, relationships feel alive and grounding. When it is absent, even strong bonds can feel fragile, leaving individuals searching for the closeness they no longer feel within their own relationship.